Hello, everyone. Welcome to the March edition of IFLA's Talk and Share. Today, our theme is going to be navigating ethics in landscape architecture and tourism. I hope you're all as excited as me for today's topic. So share your thoughts and engage with us via our platforms live on YouTube and Facebook. So without further ado, I'm Toby, your host for today's discussion. To briefly introduce myself, I'm a landscape architect based in Melbourne, Australia, where I work for Tract Consultants. My experience includes designing destinations in my home city that guide visitors through Melbourne's history and culture. My passion for research and travel has also led me across Asia to learn how different cities celebrate their unique cultures through innovative design and experiences. So to provide a brief overview of this webinar series, IFLA Talk and Share aims to enrich landscape education by aligning it with the international standards and fostering the development of unique national characteristics in landscape education across various countries. Talk and Share brings together a diverse array of scholars to explore various topics, all aimed at advancing landscape design in the Asia-Pacific region. So for today's session, we're focusing on how landscape architecture influences ethical tourism. We will discuss the pivotal role landscape architects have in creating sustainable and ethically responsible tourism spaces, as well as the common ethical dilemmas and challenges faced by professionals in adhering to sustainability standards. So to start us off, everyone tuning in on our live stream platforms should see a poll appear on your screen shortly. So please type in your best answer to help us gauge everyone's perception of today's topic. So I'd love to hear from you all at home. Scan this QR code you can see on your screen now, or you can visit slidio.com, which is the website on your screen, and enter the code #4205809 to participate in the poll. So the first question we're asking you all tonight is, where are you currently watching the IFLA Talk and Share from? So please, scan the QR code or go to the website and let us know where you're watching from. I'm currently joining you all from Melbourne, Australia, as I said. So be interesting. Do I have any other Australians watching or anyone from other countries around the world? Oh, great. We're having some answers come in. You don't have to put in the number if you're scanning the QR code. We've got some Malaysians, Filipinos, UAE. Great. Exciting. Quite a few people from the Philippines tuning in. Oh, we've got Sydney. Great to see another Australian. Singapore. Come on, everyone. Where else are we all watching from? There's got to be more of you out there. Great, good to see. We also have some people commenting from Hong Kong and Singapore. You can also see all your comments coming through here. Hey, great to see you all. Oh, we've got Germany as well. India. Fantastic, all over. Great to see we're not even just joining from the Asia Pacific. Well, it's exciting. Well, yeah, it's great to see people from all over different countries joining us for the IFLA's Talk and Share this month. We hope you're all wide awake and ready for the rest of our program. So to enrich our understanding of today's topic, we're joined by landscape architects and professionals with profound backgrounds in tourism. So joining us today, we have Professor Hitesh Mehta, who's a fellow of the American Society of Landscape Architects, the Architectural Association of Kenya, and the Royal Institute of British Architects, and an associate of the American Institute of Architects, and is recognized for his experience in sustainable tourism, ecotourism, and eco-lodge planning, with 30 years experience working in over 67 countries. So he's a landscape architect, interior architect, and environmental planner. He's a multi-international award-winning designer with awards in landscape architecture, planning, architecture, urban design, creative writing, and interior design. His firm, HM Design, is engaged in ethical projects in India, Kenya, and Liberia. He is currently a professor and executive in residence at the Florida International University and is known for his research on international trends in ecotourism and eco-lodges. Professor Hitesh is the author and photographer of Authentic Eco-Lodges and the editor of the International Eco-Lodge Guidelines. He was recognized by the National Geographic as one of the 5 sustainable tourism pioneers in 2006 for his work in master planning to protect habitats and alleviate human poverty. Moreover, Professor Hitesh is a founding member of the Global Ecotourism Network and served on the board of the International Ecotourism Society for 16 years. He's received numerous awards, including an Outstanding Achievement Award from the UNEP in 2015. Thanks for joining us, Professor Hitesh.
Thank you.
Great to see you. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
And joining us as well, we have Professor Nafiel Navarra. So Professor Nafi, who's a member of the Philippine Association of Landscape Architects, holds a bachelor degree of arts in political science and a bachelor degree in landscape architecture from the University of Philippines, Diliman. He's earned his master's degree in tropical landscape architecture from the same institution and went on to complete his doctorate in engineering, majoring in environmental planning and design at the University of Tokyo. Currently, Professor Nafi serves as a professor in the College of Architecture at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. In addition to his teaching, he is the coordinator of the Integrated Graduate Program and the Environmental Landscape Studio Laboratory. Beyond his academic role, Professor Nafi is actively engaged in design consultancy and projects in landscape planning and design, which aims to create a positive impact on the environment and the community. Yeah, thank you as well, Professor Nafi, for joining us tonight. Very excited to have you with us as well.
Yeah, good evening, everyone, or good morning to other parts of the world.
Yeah, so we've definitely got a international crowd with us tonight from all over. So yeah, thank you. So before we start, we'd just like to remind everyone watching online that your questions will be answered later in the Q&A portion of the talk. So just leave your questions in the chat box and we'll get to them later. So to ensure a better flow of our discussion, our speakers will briefly present on their concepts of sustainable landscape architecture in the tourism sector. So I'm going to ask you both a guiding question, and I'll ask Professor Hitesh to answer first, and then Professor Nafi, I'll ask you to do a presentation on your answer second. So our first question tonight that we'll be discussing is, how do you define a sustainable landscape design specifically created to support the tourism sector? Could you provide us with a sample of projects that you consider exemplary products of ethically designed tourism landscapes? This could be one of your projects or someone else's. So I invite you, Professor Hitesh, to share your screen and teach us about sustainable landscapes.
Good. Thank you, Toby, for the introduction. I'm just going to say a few other tidbits of information. I am from the 44th tribe of Kenya, which is called Kenyan Asians. 70% of the time, I'm based here in my office in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And the other 30%, I'm in some remote location around the world. This is my office in the jungles of Costa Rica. I love to travel. Most of it is through work and for research. And I've been to over 108 countries across all 6 continents and extensively in the Asia-Pacific region. And as I present to you, right in front of me is the portrait of probably the most ethical of Asians, Mr. Gandhi, who is continuously telling me to be the change that I would like to see in the world. I live a very ethical lifestyle. 100% of my whole house, that's my wife there on the left, is eco-friendly. native species, and recycled materials, etc. And I own the first Toyota Prius hybrid car in Florida, and still going strong after 23 years. I've been a vegan now for over 17 years and in over 65 countries. So what I do on a daily basis at home is the same as what I would do at work. And I'm also a Hall of Fame cricket player from Kenya, and I've played in 3 World Cups. So before I talk a little about the sustainable design aspects of tourism sector, it's really important to understand the bigger picture about the 2 most ethical aspects of tourism or types of tourism. Sustainable tourism is where I will start, which is a tourism that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And the World Tourism Organization has come up with quite a few core indicators, 11 of them for sustainable tourism. And you will note that all the ones highlighted in red are all connected to landscape architecture and design. So if ecotourism is well done, it becomes the only type of tourism which is 100% sustainable. And in terms of ethical aspects, it's the most ethical of all types of tourism. And that's what I'd like to focus on, because if you can, as a landscape architect, address the ethics in ecotourism, then you are okay with any of the other types of tourism. So there are 3 most important pillars in ecotourism. One is conservation of nature and the environment. The other one is sustaining the well-being of local communities and indigenous communities. And the third one is providing a rich interpretation, experience and education to all those that are involved, visitors, staff, and the visited. So some of the money coming from tourists is going towards protection of nature. In this case, in El Nido, in the Philippines, or it could be the Flinders Ranges in southern Australia, or it could be tigers in Thailand or India, etc. The giant panda in China. It also, we're talking about helping benefit local communities. So this is a worker in Mongolia helping to build up an eco camp. It could be a local community in Java, or helping an eco lodge in Myanmar. By the way, all of these are my photographs. So, I'm talking from the horse's mouth. It's also about protecting and enhancing local symbologies, local dancing, local music, like the Haka dance here by the Maoris. Or it could be the Kathakali dance in southern India, in Kerala. It's about interpretation, about education, about providing rich experiences to tourists. This is an interpreter guide in Malaysia, Sabah. Or you could be in the Cardamom Mountains in Cambodia. And this is all what ecotourism is about. There is no wonder that when the UN Assembly met in 2013, they only picked up one type of tourism when they recognized it as one that is key in the fight against poverty, the protection of the environment, and the promotion of sustainable development. They actually highlighted ecotourism as providing a positive impact on income generation, job creation, and education, and thus on the fight against poverty and hunger. So I've been was a board member for 14 years of International Ecotourism Society, where I was the head of the Standards and Ethics Committee. And under my leadership, we came up and massaged with quite a few of the principles and the ethics of ecotourism. A particular one you will not find in any type of tourism is the first one there that's talking about minimizing physical, social, behavioral, and psychological impacts of other species. So ecotourism is non-consumptive. It creates an ecological conscience and it holds ecocentric values and ethics in relation to nature. So if we use these ethics in any work we do in the tourism sector, you are for sure going to have something that is going to have a strong sense of place and connectedness. So talking about sustainable landscape design now, knowing what the tourism is all about, it's very important that it needs to have financial sustainability, it needs to have social sustainability, it needs to have environmental sustainability, and most importantly, also spiritual sustainability. So starting from the beginning, landscape design begins with site evaluation and selection about the location and accessibility and how can you reduce your carbon depending on where you locate your sites, etc., creating a sense and sacredness of space, understanding what the local communities are and resources. So this is, as a landscape architect, these are all the things you would be doing, when you are evaluating and selecting a site. And what are the impacts of the development going to be as well? You would then do a very detailed site inventory and analysis that would include wildlife habitats and geology and vegetation and climatic conditions, etc. And then after the physical analysis, what we would recommend highly and what we do is metaphysical analysis, is immersing into the site using your 6 main senses. So you start with sight, and then sound, and then smell. And after every one of these exercises, you jot down what is it that you're experiencing. Then you have touch and taste, and finally feel, where you become a part of the site. You take the Homo sapien out of you and you become the site. And this is an exercise you do even in an urban setting, in an urban hotel, if you have one. Another very important part about sustainable landscape design in the tourism sector is to ensure that you involve local communities from day one of the planning and design process. Here we are working with the Sumbanese people in Indonesia, or with the Chinese in southern India, southern China, or making sure making sure that you involve them right from the beginning and give them the drawing pens and the pencils and the markers and bring them to the table. And this is in Sri Lanka. There's of course the site planning aspects, of landscape design. When you're planning for weather, you're looking into the views to create that spiritual connection with nature, looking into drainage, native species, etc., and respecting the chi of the site. So, understanding where the winds are coming from different times of the year, and how do you work with that, how you orient your buildings, your spaces, your plant species, so that, they are going to be resilient. And then when you get really into the detail, looking into the roads design, the building, the planting design, building of nature trails, and the drainage aspects, and finally the kind of landscape materials that you choose and how eco-friendly they are. This is a sketch from one of our drawings for a project in Australia, where we are using native species, 100% native species. A little bit more detail. And, in terms of, even the decking and the balustrades for the electric carts, all from recycled materials. These are all made from railway ties. The risers are from recycled materials for this trail. Same thing with landscape fittings, lighting fittings, all made from 100% native. And for me, a sustainable landscape design is very successful when you can't even see the project at all. This whole eco-lodge that you see here that we did in Dominica in the Caribbean is underneath those trees. So I'm going to take you very quickly to a couple of our projects. This is the Crosswaters Eco-Lodge and Spa. As these are what I would say are exemplary projects regarding the use of sustainable landscape design. Located 2 hours north of Guangzhou in the mountains of Nankun, so the Nankunshan area. deciduous forest, but the local people are growing bamboo there. So we go with our sketchbooks. We are trying to show, really capture how the connection is between the people and the bamboo, that symbological connection. We are studying rammed earth construction and the local culture. We are looking at how they use bamboo for the irrigation of their fields. We are studying the typology of forms. We are studying the use of exterior spaces, outdoor spaces. And that's when we meet with the local people. They are the Khaja, a minority group, and to understand their aspirations and their wishes and what is it that they would like. And then we do an opportunities and constraints map. This is followed by a conceptual master plan of the whole lodge. And it is at this point, and this master plan has been done because the clients wanted it to be done with feng shui principles. So the whole main axis is laid out on feng shui principles, like the ones you see on the Summer Palace in Beijing or the Forbidden City, the 3 degrees of north and south axis. Then we bring in a feng shui master. Is 20 years, was a professor at Hong Kong Polytechnic, and he comes in and he looks and surveys looks at the site, surveys the master plan, the conceptual plan, and makes his comments. And we make changes and we create a schematic design, which included 8 different gardens. Each garden, we went back and did a lot of research about Chinese history, Chinese symbolisms, Chinese philosophy, Chinese psychology, and everything, and then came up with different gardens. This is the Poet's Garden, where people first arrive by car. And you can see each poem there is, well, you can't see it, but each poem there is talking about the connection of the Chinese with their landscape, the spiritual connection. And you can see what we had studied and how we are bringing it back, just a little fountain. The main arrival experience is this bamboo bridge, the first one to be built outside of Colombia in the world. It's built out of the same bamboo from the forest, surrounding forest. That is the arrival experience. And then from the bamboo forest, you come to the second garden, which is the reflective garden. We studied the Suzhou gardens in China to come up with this reflective garden. And then the next area is the longevity garden. Chinese have a very strong connection with longevity. They have 8 objects or subjects that they connect with longevity. One of them is the chrysanthemum, and we designed these 2-meter radius, 2-meter diameter circles. This is the chrysanthemum, this is the bamboo, and we got local people using recycled materials and stone to create these motifs. There's the lotus garden. The Chinese and the India both have very strong connections to the lotus. This is an aerial view of that garden. It has now become the most photographed garden for any lodge in China. A lot of people, children, kids, everybody coming in it and enjoying it. There's the garden of cultivation, where we have local farmers come in every day and they tend and harvest the garden, and all the food is used in the kitchen of the eco-lodge. A walkway that goes right across the site, made out of bamboo and inspired by the walkway of the Summer Palace in Beijing. We have observation towers, all made out of recycled materials. And that's sort of the finished product that you see there. 100% of all species are not only native to China, but native to the region itself. Again, a lot of research going on. We brought in a professor of horticulture onto the project for this thing, and you can see the finished product. So there's a timeless quality when you mix the materials that are all recycled, including the trails and everything, and that is what you see. That's finished. And finally, very quickly, I'll go through a project from my home country in the Masai Mara, very close to the Masai Mara National Reserve in Kenya, where a local community, the Masai, owned 20,000 hectares of land, and they wanted to turn that into a wildlife conservancy. So they brought us in to create a large conservancy, an ecotourism master plan. And for 7 days, we went with the local people and used their ancestral intelligence. We have been using AI for 30 years. And that ancestral intelligence is really important for any project, because they've been around on that site more than we have. In fact, in their case, we're talking 2 million years of history. And so they are showing us, and we give them the pencils. We get them to do the drawings with us, the master planning. They show us where it is that they got their sacred hills. Where is it that they do their spiritual ceremonies? Where is it that do their male bonding? Then we create the plan and we ensure that their spaces are protected. The master plan is like a Monet painting. There are like 8 different layers of painting on this plan, all done by hand. There is no technology or digital technology that has been used. And they've got a camp. They wanted it to resurrect that camp, the lodge. So we go through the processes with them. We create a site plan that mimics a Masai Manyata. And it is here we use tablet technology to create that site plan. You can see the Masai Manyata on the top left. You can see the plan of the Eco Lodge, and then that whole circular sense to it. We created tablet enhanced renderings to show the Maasai people what their place is going to look like. They approved it. So we then take it to the next stage. Not one single tree was cut on the whole project. There were 20,000 plants that were native species that were introduced. And finally, you have this finished product. Even the animals themselves are very happy that the architecture, the landscaping of the project is not disturbing them and destroying them. So the majority of the design profession and hotel operators are not practicing true stewardship and mostly giving lip service. What I'm seeing is that they've become accomplices to the rape and pillage that has been going on around the world. We are going to be talking about this a little bit later on as we discuss the greenwashing that's been going on in the traditional industry. So thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Professor Hitesh. That was a joy to listen to you speak. I really liked your practical steps for starting our own sustainable landscape designs. It was great seeing you work with local people in all your projects and using their knowledge to really improve your design. It's good to remember that as designers, we're not always the experts in the room. We have to
Thank you.
work with those who are there and know much more about these places than us. So thank you very much. I'll now pass it over to Professor Nappy to then give us a short presentation, again on the topic of how we define sustainable landscape design, specifically create to support the tourism sector. So Nappy, please take it away. I'm excited to hear what you've got to share with us today. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Toby. And of course, with the presentation made by Professor Mehta, I think it's quite interesting to also bring which has already been mentioned about the role of landscape architect as stewards of the land. And that is really more on how we, as not just as creators or as agents of creation, but really in terms of how we can serve as the conscience in terms of the changing landscapes that we're experiencing right now, not only in the field of tourism, but also more so in terms of how our survival and existence as a species is actually at stake. Okay, can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so I would like to focus on the concept of landscape justice, and this one is comprised of 2 words: landscape and, of course, justice. When we talk about landscape, we can look at it in 2 ways also. So landscape is a way of gazing the landscape, something that is external to us being humans. it's quite important to see it as maybe a product of the Western idea of on how we were able to appreciate landscape that is distinct from us as species. On the other hand, landscape can also be something that is lived, that is experienced, that is not divorced from us being humans, but we being part of the landscape. So that's how we can view the landscape. On the other hand, justice is more on how we have positioned or have accepted that role of being stewards of what we have, of our resources, of the landscape, in such a way that we serve that conscience in terms of the distribution of resources, of owning the land, and eventually coming up with inclusive decisions in terms of who and how we benefit, and of course, reap what we have sown in our landscape. Can we go to the next slide, please? So when we say landscape justice as a concept, it's a matter of the distribution of the harms and benefits relating to the landscape. So it's not just all getting the who benefits from the landscape, but also how are we responsible in terms of addressing the concerns. As previously presented by Professor Hitesh, that sustainability is really more on us being accountable for on how the future will have to benefit from the decisions that we're making. It's that we are borrowing the landscapes that the future will eventually have to live with. So environmental justice concerns procedures or fairness in the way decisions are made about our landscape. It is about recognizing whether these different voices that we involve in our decision making, mainly those who, including those who are not, who are not in a position to articulate their needs, their wants, their visions. Okay, so those voices, okay, that need to be heard. The perspectives and needs are accorded legitimacy or ignored and denied. So it's a matter of capabilities, meaning for people's capacity to achieve the outcomes they desire with regard to the landscape. So that's the concept of landscape justice. So in a way, we are making ourselves as landscape architects responsible in terms of how we become agents, not just of the scenes of our predecessors, but also making us responsible and accountable for the future's landscapes. Next. So this is closely tied with the concept of environmental ethics. And environmental ethics is a subfield of philosophy which is extensively concerned of moral values of human and non-human world toward their environment. So when we talk about moral values, we talk about the shifting and the changing mores, norms of our societies. So maybe before it was acceptable to say subjugate certain sexes in the name of colonization or in the name of religion, but now there's a greater call for inclusiveness on how we come up or arrive with decisions. Also, the same with landscapes in terms of how we make decisions that is not selfish, that is not purely made out of our need to satisfy our present needs. So that's what's interesting here. In order for us to look at the human and non-human world, meaning we should be concerned about not just for our species, but also for the non-human species that live with us. So we have this natural recognition that the landscape that we have is shared with other species. Some may have been in our landscapes much longer than we have lived in our landscape. So it's interesting to to have that role, but at the same time, it's a big responsibility. I won't even call it a burden, but it's our responsibility for us to be able to make that decision for everyone and for everything. Next. Okay, so when we talk about environmental ethics, we are looking at two major major aspects of environmental ethics. So we have the anthropocentric and the non-anthropocentric values that we have. So the anthropocentric or anthropocentrism places human at central of the universe, separated from nature and endowed with unique values. So the rest of nature is of instrumental value, meaning satisfies that satisfies the the humans here. It has value and deserves moral consideration only as it enhances the human well-being. So um, it's it's one of the most common value system that is kind of prevalent, especially during the when we are exhaustively using the Earth's resources without really considering its effects. Okay, and and the another side to the environmental ethics is of course the anthropocentrism. So the value here bases their beliefs in intrinsic value in non-human nature apart from its usefulness to or appreciation by humans. Meaning nature on itself has value beyond how humans place value to nature. So the environment, although it might exist outside of the human experience, has its value already, regardless how we put value to that to nature. Okay, next. So looking more closely to anthropocentrism, okay, we have three different concepts that fall under here. So we have the egocentrism, okay, which regards one's self generally often interests as the most important. For egocentric, okay, nature is seen as a resource to be exploited for human benefit. So think about colonialism, think about imperialism. Okay, typically the ecocentrism is associated with the thoughts in liberalism, capitalism, and free markets or related to those ideologies. Another another kind of anthropocentrism is the homocentrism, which is grounded in notions of health and welfare of society and regard non-human, or which we would term as the environment. So as a resource base for human consumption. So all of this is for human consumption. That for example, that we would often hear this with some religious organization um, telling humans that they can exploit everything around them. Okay, so another kind of anthropocentrism is technocentrists, which basically put their faith in technology to address the different environmental problems in the long term. So many of these technocentrists believe that form of society will be able to continue for economic growth and technology, um, which will be able to be cured by the different environmental difficulties that may be encountered. So the idea here is that there's this innate faith in technology to address any future concerns uh, like for example, any for global warming, okay, for other great environmental issues that we are facing right now. Okay, next. On the other hand, there's non-anthropocentrism, okay, where first one is the biocentrism, which extends the boundaries of moral significance to include other members of the biotic community. Okay, so this would include the plants and animals, and in which value ecosystem is serves the basis in terms of valuing the landscapes which contain the plants and animals within them. Okay, another one is ecocentric views of human, in which humankind is part of the ecosystem and also subjected to the different ecological laws. So this is kind of not really an extreme, but it's more of looking into the humans as a essential component of the landscape of the ecosystem, which any failure in the system would inadvertently affect humans also. And of course, lastly, we have deep ecology, which places its advocacy to the existence of non-humans organisms and also concerned with the interrelations with other existence within its ecosystem. So deep ecology relies on ecology science to provide fundamental understanding of natural ecosystems and issues that underlie the environmental crisis that we are experiencing. So here we are looking at how ecology, okay, could somehow address the issues that we have through by looking at it in its ecosystems timeline, not within the human terms. Okay, next. So I would also like to present how IFLA World has provided us with a set of principles that hopefully would provide us with a global ethical principles on how we could practice our profession. And the aim of these principles is to establish and to promote global ethical best practice, as well as ensuring the public's confidence and trust in our profession. It has also provide us with future proofing and to help attract new talents into our profession. Next. So when we look at these different principles, there are 7 principles that are contained here. So the first one is that landscape architects promote conservation and enhancement of the environment and quality of life for now and future generations. Okay. The second one is that we recognize the issue of climate and biodiversity emergency and practice in a manner consistent with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Okay. The third principle is that landscape architects work collaboratively with and are respectful of others and do not, in their provision of landscape services, unlawfully discriminate. Okay. The fourth principle is that landscape architects comply with national and international laws. The fifth principle states that landscape architects are committed to continuing professional development and ensure they only provide services they are competent to deliver. And landscape architects deliver quality landscape services and clients and or public and are able to provide feedback or raise issues about services. Okay, I would like to emphasize here that clients may not necessarily always be those who are paying professional service, but clients who should include the community we are working with, both human and non-human communities. So the last principle is that landscape architects uphold the integrity of the landscape profession and are honest and transparent in their relationship with their national body or regulator. So these are mostly administrative in essence. But the first four principles would really put us in a very responsible role or prominent role in terms of how we are managing our landscapes. How we are, as designers, not only provide services that are within the realm of aesthetics, but also how we can enhance and promote the future landscapes. Next. So, as Waterman mentioned, that if there are any dialogue between human and environment, then most of the times we're talking about landscape architecture. So the discipline, okay, and profession intervenes in the environment for a variety of social, aesthetic, and environmental motives. So we should always remember that this role that we have is quite important. And I would just like to, unlike Professor Hitesh's examples in his presentation, I would like to present to you a case that recently the Philippine Association of Landscape Architects was very much concerned about. Can we go to the next slide, please? So, last week, okay, there has been an issue on one of the important landscapes in the Philippines, and this is the development of resort in what we would consider as one of the national treasures of the Philippines. It's located in these natural forming hills, okay, karst landscapes that have steered a lot of discussions among professionals and even non-professionals, thus leading to this post of Pala to become viral. I think the first time for the organization to go viral. But what we are trying to point out here is that I think this is the core of environmental ethics. With this very short but quite concise statement, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So as you know, this speaks volumes in terms of we as human beings, as species, even if we have the capacity, does it mean that should we change or modify the landscapes just because we can right now? So I think that's quite important in terms of introspecting what we can do and how we should do as landscape architects in the face of the changing landscapes, be it in the legal infrastructure, be it in the climate emergency that we're facing, be it in the changing social and demographic changes that we are experiencing. It's quite important that we know how to temper that urge to change, to constantly change and make something new when we have these landscapes that we need to be protecting and conserving here. The next one. And just to show you that this Chocolate Hills has been recognized, well, although tentatively, as UNESCO's World Heritage Site. So who are we to change this? Okay, that the idea of World Heritage Site is that it's something that need to be bestowed, okay, to be passed on as legacy to our future generations. And if we're going to try to exploit this resource, this landscape right now, what are we leaving to the future generations? Okay, so that's it for now, and I would like to leave this for everyone to contemplate on in terms of how we, as our landscape, as our role of being stewards of the landscape, can become, an agent of creating a better landscapes for the future. So, for reference, and that's it for me. Thank you very much for your time.
Great. Thank you, Professor Nappy, for that really detailed and insightful presentation. Really liked your explanation of the difference between anthropocentrism and non-anthropocentrism.
Yeah, it's a
big tongue twist of words, but It's great to consider non-human perspectives in design. As designers, I think we really do have that responsibility to consider just beyond ourselves. So what difference can we make and what impact are we having? And then, great discussion of our ethical responsibilities as landscape architects as well. So thank you again. So before we proceed, we got another poll question for everyone online to make sure you're still there and engaged. So I'm going to pull up another QR code on the screen again, or you can once again visit slidio.com and enter the code to participate in the poll. So today's poll will be now asking you which statement best reflects your understanding of the concept of greenwashing in landscape architecture. So have a read through the options and see if you can guess at what the correct answer will be. This is a bit of foreshadowing as well, as we're going to be discussing greenwashing coming up. All of the above is looking like our clear winner at the moment. Anyone else dare to guess another option? Well, we've got some more answers coming in. Great. Well, I hope that's got you all starting to consider what greenwashing is in landscape architecture. It's definitely a very topical subject. So I'll jump into our next set of questions. These are going to be a bit shorter, Professor Nappy and Professor Hitesh. So I'll just ask you both a couple of questions, and I'm keen to hear your thoughts on them as well. So first question is, what are your thoughts on using the term sustainability in design? Have you heard about the concept of greenwashing? So I'll ask you first, Professor Hitesh, do you have any thoughts on greenwashing and using sustainability in design?
Yes. Actually, talk about it in the class to my students here at the university. And I'll go with all of the above in the questions that you just presented. It's really unfortunate that in the traditional industry, tourism industry, you find that there is a lot of greenwashing. And it was actually because of the greenwashing going on that I decided to travel to 46 countries around the world to work on my last book, Authentic Ecologist, to try to present to people what is authentic and what is really greenwashing. We have, for so many years now, you will find a property that just recycles its towels. It says, if you don't want to use your towels, put them on the floor. If you want to use them, keep it up on the rack. And then they will just from that act, they will call themselves eco-friendly. Now, more recently, you're finding the situation with plastic bottles. If they provide you with the water, and just with that one act, they market their whole property as eco-friendly. Most recently, you hear the word carbon zero and net zero and all this. There's a very famous British architect called Buckminster Fuller, an engineer, and he says to rape a building, to build a building, you rape the earth. So basically, no matter what you do, there's going to be some usage. So I think the word sustainability itself, there has been a lot of question marks. So when we were working on the definition for ecotourism, we made sure we didn't use the word sustainable in it, because it's a very vague, ambiguous word. And up to some people are now using the word regenerative and responsible, and I mean, you could just go on and on. But yes, there has been a lot of greenwashing going on. You look at the big chains like Marriott or Sheraton or any of these, Accor, out of the 2,000 properties they have, they probably only have 3 or 4 properties that are really doing eco stuff. And they will just use those 3 or 4 and to present an image like they're doing this really fantastic, caring of the earth, which is
Yes, I know what you're saying. It's sustainability has become a real marketing buzzword to make yourself look good. How about yourself, Professor?
Same thing with ecotourism. People are wanting to go into the bandwagon, and now they are traditional nature tourism properties or tour operators calling themselves ecotourism or ecotours when they are really not what they are.
Exactly. So, Professor Nappy, do you have any thoughts on this whole thing of sustainability as a buzzword and greenwashing?
Yeah, definitely. For me, a good design should be automatically sustainable. Good design.
Yeah.
So, but we have to qualify what a good design is. But yeah, it might be true that we've been abusing the word sustainability, and yeah, I would agree with Prof. Hitesh about the term ecotourism because that's often been dropped, as a kind of a come on for anyone who would like, to be less guilty about, spending their time in a resort. But for me, I think we can also, as someone who as an organization, as professionals who have maybe been more conscientious on our decisions and our decision making, that we have to also consider that some people, some sectors may have very limited idea of how they can be part in terms of making a long-term change or modifications in their lifestyle, in their choices. So in such a way that we are, it's quite easy for us to brand them as greenwashing. So what
Yeah.
if that's the only thing that they can, the extent of what they think they can do? And I think what scares me here is really more on lulling us into the idea that we have done our part, that everything's going to be okay because we decided to reuse our towels in hotels, or like we're using recycled, or we're using um, paper straws instead of using plastic straws. So I think that's it might be easy for us to judge others because they're using that. But what if that's the only thing they can think in terms of being part of the process? So I think that calls us as landscape architects to raise awareness in terms of and empower these people on how they can be more part in creating solutions instead of worsening the issue of our environment, in terms of inequitability of our society.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, great answer. Thank you. So on to our second question. Could you both tell us about what parameters make a good landscape design for tourism ethically acceptable or unacceptable? It's a tough question of what is an ethical landscape design. So I'm interested to hear both of your thoughts on that. Professor Hitesh, do you want to start us off again?
All right, sure. Yeah, I've been addressing this question now for over 25, 30 years. And for me, it's a no-brainer situation. Coming from the ecocentric approach, a non-anthropocentric approach, where good landscape design is when the landscape architect does not have any ego, is working on the design where they place the humans in the same light and giving the same attention as non-human species, both plants and animals.
Mm-hmm.
That is the overall thing, that's how the approach needs to be. And then from there on, depending on which part of landscape design you are working on, you want to make sure that that overall picture is right there, right through the whole project, all the way from selecting a site, all the way down to construction drawings and supervision. You have to ensure that that philosophical approach is taken right through. So how you include local communities and local consultants from day one of the process, important. How you make sure that you are not destroying the planet through the choice of your materials is ethical landscape design. Ensuring that you are using native species, so you have to use less water, that you're increasing biodiversity by using native species. All these are ethical approaches for landscape design. As soon as you bring the bougainvilleas and the hibiscuses, like they do in the traditional tourism industry, for me, that is not an ethical approach. I'm sorry. Exotic species, out of the question.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm loving this theme coming through of that ethical landscape design and sustainable landscape design is really just good landscape design. That we're doing our jobs well and really thinking about these projects, then we should be considering these things. Professor Nappy, do you have any thoughts on what parameters make a landscape design for tourism ethically acceptable or unacceptable?
Totally agree with Professor Ritesh and his, in his insights. I'm sure with his extensive experience in creating sustainable and, I think, okay, to be honest, the first time I heard Professor Ritesh was when he was involved in some of the projects, eco lodges here in the Philippines with our former Department of Tourism Secretary. And I think it was, I think, more than 10 years ago, I guess. And I think with taking off from what Professor Hitesh mentioned, I think what my basic parameter is really the respect that that our development has for the landscape, the terrain, the different water and hydrological systems, the weather, and of course, the climate, microclimate, vegetation, the fauna, the soil. We are always forgetting soil, where as a vital resource, and of course this indigenous knowledge that sometimes we forget. Okay, that because of, again, the ego of a designer, that we know better than the community living there. I think that's one of the pitfalls for many of our landscape architects or designers in creating a sustainable tourism development. And I think what is for me a good tourism development would be something that would enhance the environment, the landscape, after from what it was. I think that as long as you can enhance the landscape from how it was before you have that tourism development, I think that's how we could qualify it as acceptable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great answer. Yeah, both very insightful. I can see we've got a few questions coming through in the comments, so it'd be great to jump over to them before we start closing out the event. So the first question from Sri Devi for both of you is, ecosystem-centric landscape design and landscape urbanism have some commonalities. Would that be a correct assumption?
That would be a correct assumption. There are several commonalities, particularly related, of course, to the outdoor spaces in the urban areas. Where they are different, and the most important part is that landscape urbanism talks a lot about the landscape component as a space. But when you look at the ecosystem-centric approaches, there is a strong connection to ecology and environmental ethic that goes with it. So I think those are the two. There are of course the commonalities that the landscape has been given attention in the urban areas, but but ecosystem takes it to a lot more detailed level. There's a stronger spiritual quality about connection to nature and how we respect it when we talk about ecosystem-centric landscape design.
Yeah, good points. Professor Nappy, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think there might be an intersection, but I think they kind of exist in a different plane. For me, ecocentrism is really more of a belief system in terms of how we look at the relationship between, not between, but the relationship of humans and the landscape and the environment. In terms of it can develop into an approach as to how we could develop certain systems, be it legal, be it planning or design. However, landscape urbanism is really more on trying to bring back nature into our urban areas, urban centers. So that's why we have concepts like the green fingers or the creeping greens, in which we are allowing or getting back the green spaces that we have lost in our when we were urbanizing. I think in that sense it can be a development concept, okay, a landscape urbanism, versus the other one is more of a kind of paradigm in terms of how we look at relationships of humans.
Yeah, great. Got another question from Enrico, who's got a specific example that is interested in you both discussing. So he's requesting for both of you to comment and present your opinion on how the landscape architect can navigate through this. A project type in the Gulf region where projects are commercially driven, often putting a premium on achieving an iconic image. Project scales are large, such that approach and interventions to the natural systems should rightly be viewed in a regional scale. Often the solutions, as mentioned by Dr. Navarra, technocentric. How can we muddle through this? The classic large iconic images. Do either of you had any thoughts on this question from Enrico?
Professor Navarra, do you want to start and then I'll add?
Okay, this is quite interesting, and hello, Ms. Rico Flor, for the question. Quite difficult, and I guess you're actually in a position to, to come up with statements regarding. I don't know if you're part of any of the projects that are ongoing in the Middle East, but I think this is quite a clear, example of anthropocentrism, wherein it's really the ego, the idea of what can be iconic, what kind of legacy can be left by the designers, by the planners, by the kingdom, that is, by the patrons that are commissioning the project. In terms of, I think, in terms of how we can navigate as landscape architects, in the sense, this puts us in a very interesting situation, okay, as to how you can provide support to a project that is too massive, even too rigid, in the sense that they're trying to change, the ecosystem. And this one would entail, would put us in a situation where are we going to support this when we know it's kind of travesty to nature in that sense, but still we know that humans or people will be there. Communities will 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 sprout there. So in a way, I think we need to still be there to allay, the different possible concerns, but to address the maybe the environmental and the social effects of this massive construction. So it's like just putting it in a perspective like lawyers. When you know that client, or prospective client is guilty, would you still want to defend that person? So for me, I would agree to serve the guilty clients in the court in order for me to provide to help come up with justice. Okay, who on how we as humans are collectively responsible for the decisions, even if we are not directly making the decision. But the fact that we, in our lifetime, allowed it to happen, I think we should be part of it. That we should be responsible in terms of addressing the effects of it. That's it for me.
Great. Yeah, that's a good point. That it's not always clear cut what is ethical and how to deal with these problems. I like your analogy of the lawyer.
Yeah. So in my case, I used to be the head of the environmental design planning department of a firm 20 years ago that ended up doing quite a few of the iconic landscapes in Dubai and that whole area. So I know a lot of the stuff that was happening behind the scenes in that place. And since then I've carried out quite a bit of research. And this is where the real issues with the Middle East and the Gulf region and what's taking place there. It's very much egotistical design, where the main focus is on how sexy the place looks and how big it is. So they can go around and market itself as the longest, as the tallest, or the largest, or the biggest. They're not at all interested in the environmental side of things. So that particular thing I showed you about landscape design, the only interest they have is financial sustainability. There's nothing to do with environmental, nothing to do with social. All of the workers are coming from Bangladesh and India and Pakistan, and they're living in terrible conditions. So none of that is taken into account. And as a landscape architect working in those places, the latest challenges that are coming up for landscape architects and designers is the NEOM project in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia now has gone into the bandwagon. Mm-hmm. And now they're creating these humongous structures in the middle of the desert. Obviously, all the water is going to be through osmosis. There's going to be a lot of electricity used, a lot of oil that will be used. So none of this is sustainable at all. And at the end of the day, you have, as a landscape architect, I come back to the ethics.
Yeah.
In my where I am in my stage, it's very simple. If a project does not have an environmental or a social ethic, an ethos, we're not interested. Even though if the fees are $10 million, we are not interested in working. So if I were to take the analogy of Star Wars and the movies, that is the dark side. You make your decision whether you want to go to the dark side or not, or you just leave it in spite of the big money that may be coming with it, because their interest is the largest, the longest, the biggest. So they are into building phallic symbols. You look at all those buildings, more than half of them for the longest time were not even occupied, but they have the money. So it's what the Professor Navarra said earlier, just because you can, well, I mean, should you do it? I mean, where is the ethics?
Sounds like you're very clear-cut there, Professor Hitesh, on what you think. And as someone that walks the walk, I think I believe you in that no amount of money could convince you to take on a project like that. To the next question, Francisco has asked you specifically, Professor Hitesh, could you please provide more information about the methods, surveys, and data your team gathered to determine suitable locations for the projects you develop?
Oh, great question. Over a period of time, we have developed a 22-point criteria system on the selection of a particular site. And this is, of course, from all the books I've written and the eco-lodge criteria systems, the tourism criteria systems. And then what we do is we have we have a rating system that goes with each one of the criterias when we go around. And then at the end, we will look at the rating. So actually, we get paid to use this rating systems as we go around the world. Most recently was in Panama, where they gave us, they'd chosen 3 sites. And they said, which site do you feel will be the most suitable for an ecotourism, an ethical tourism experience? So we have got a 22-point criteria system, and we use that. And that's how we go about it. Of course, when we get onto the drawing board, before we got into the drawing board, we always ensure that we need to have a topographical survey. We will not work on a project unless we have a topographical survey. We will not work on a project unless we have visited it. That is why we do not enter any competitions. That's the biggest problem with competitions in the world today, is they're asking people to design without having been on the site. We want to immerse ourselves, and that's the data. That data, which is metaphysical, is coming from the experience that you have when you are on the site. There is no instrument, that can substitute ourself, our soul, our mind, our body. And so all of these, we do a married approach. We use GIS technology, we use aerial photos, and then we use the metaphysical, marry them together, and to come up with the best suitable location.
Yeah, great. I love this emphasis on actually being there and experiencing the site. It's easy to forget that in this world of desktop analysis, and the way you can actually potentially do a whole design and site analysis without even going to the place, and you lose that important connection and experience. Well, yeah, thank you so much for all your questions, everyone. I think to keep things moving along, we'll end the Q&A session there. So I'll start wrapping us up for the night. But yeah, we've had some great words all said in the comments. Professor Hitesh and Professor Nappy, everyone's been very excited with your answers and been very engaged. Thank you very much. So to wrap us up, I've got one last quiz for everyone watching online. So scan the QR code again, and I'm going to get you to answer the question, what parameters do you believe determine the ethical acceptability of landscape design for tourism? So another one to make sure you're all awake and paying attention. Professor Nappy and Professor Hitesh, do you have any thoughts on this particular poll?
Well, it's not being, let's see.
What parameters do you believe determine the ethical acceptability of landscape design for tourism? Respect for local cultures and communities?
All of the above. All of the above, without a doubt.
This seems like an easy all of the above.
Yeah.
I think we can all agree after tonight's discussion that the ethical acceptability of landscape design is about respect for local cultures, integration of sustainable materials, and transparency in design processes. So it looks like most people have got it right there, which is great to hear. You're all still paying attention and absorbing all this great information. So yeah, thank you so much, Professor Hitesh and Professor Nafi, for sharing your valuable insights. Just want to take a moment to synthesize the key takeaways we've had from tonight so we don't forget all the great things you've said. So I particularly enjoyed tonight's mixture of both practical examples of sustainable tourism and theoretical exploration of our ethical responsibilities. Professor Hitesh, you did a great job telling us about the importance of ecotourism, which I think when well done is the most ethical kind of tourism. Its ability to provide a positive impact, provide education and a sustainable livelihood, strengthening the identity of people and the environment. It's also necessary to involve community from day one to utilize the community's knowledge, history, and spirituality of place and native materials. Loved your practical steps to sustainable landscape design, starting with thoughtful site analysis. I'll definitely be immersing myself more wholeheartedly on my next site visit, smelling and feeling the air. We were also really lucky to see some of your fantastic international projects. I really liked your Canyon master planning example using ancestral knowledge.
Ancestral intelligence, AI.
The more important AI that we should be hearing more about. I think it was a great message about just remembering we're not always the experts in the room. And Professor Nafi, thank you for introducing us to landscape justice. That was a new concept for me. I think it beautifully continued the theme of respecting people we're designing for and designing with as well. Also, there was that great explanation of the difference between anthropocentrism and non-anthropocentrism in design, prompting us to consider non-human perspectives. It was also great hearing about the ethical responsibilities of landscape architects as described by IFLA, which is really helpful, just having that clear guide for how to be sustainable and just in our practice. So yeah, thank you both again. So yeah, as we conclude, just very sincerely appreciate both of you, Professor Hitesh and Professor Nafi, for your insight and your time tonight. Hope everyone online found all the discussion enlightening as well and had some great insights. I think we have all learned that the pursuit of sustainable landscape designs, particularly in this tourism sector, presents considerable challenges. However, despite the complexities involved with such endeavors, are definitely attainable through the projects we've seen tonight. So through the expertise shared by our esteemed speakers, we have learned valuable things, considerations essential for effective planning and development in this domain. So yeah, thank you both again. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with our audience before we say good night, or good night for me and good morning for you, Professor Hitesh?
Well, thank you for organizing this to IFLA-APR. You guys are very proactive and always addressing some very important topics, especially for in Asia. The tourism side is really important. It's crucial. It brings a lot of employment to people, and a lot of the big hotel chains are all over Asia. So as a landscape architect, it's really important the kind of changes that you can make in the profession. I just wanted to very quickly, I know we have a few minutes, but I know Sridevi from Hyderabad in India had a question related to ecotourism and sustainability issues. And I can say, and as I've said before, that if it is not well done, then obviously it's not going to be sustainable. But if you look at the principles of ecotourism and what it stands for, I know of projects like there's one in Zambia that's been going on since 1949. And I know many projects all over the world, authentic ecotourism projects that have been very sustainable, that are helping benefit local communities. There has been no impacts on them, any major impacts at all. And it's always been positive. We are talking about ecosystems that have been resurrected and that have been brought back to life through ecotourism. And when it comes to interpretation education, there's no type of tourism that enriches tourists like ecotourism does. but it has to be well done. So, that's the thing that I would say. The other thing was that I also sit on the board of the International School of Sustainable Tourism, which is out from Cavite, based out of Cavite in Manila area. And so, they do some amazing little workshops. I run an eco-lodge planning and design workshop there every couple of years, and that's something to look into. And where I am right now in Florida International University, we have one of the only real sustainable tourism programs, which is totally virtually based. So if there's anybody who wants to do a sustainable tourism global program, let me know, and I'll be happy to provide information.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Some great closing thoughts there. Professor Nafi, do you have any final things you'd like to say or share?
Well, maybe, I think that we can, as landscape architects, we are not just designers, that we are not just creators, but also we can serve as the conscience of our society, of our world, of our species. And of course, maybe quite important for us to do is to be present in the site, to be present in our, with our stakeholders, with our communities, that we need to be there. We can't just be designers from afar. We need to be designers where it's going to happen, where we are, and where our public, our stakeholders are. So I think that's what I would like to leave everyone about, us as landscape architects. We have big role ahead of us.
Fantastic, inspirational last words to leave us with tonight. So, yeah, thank you both very much, and thank you everyone online for joining in this IFLA-APR talk and share for March, focusing on the theme of navigating ethics and landscape architecture and tourism. We appreciate you all participating via Facebook and YouTube. And a special thank you to the technical team and organizers for making this event possible. They've been working hard behind the scenes tonight and for many weeks to make this event happen. We'd also like to just take a few minutes to ask participants to share their thoughts and suggestions regarding today's session. So if you have any topic requests for the upcoming IFLA-APR talk and share series, feel free to jot them down in the feedback form. Stay tuned for the next IFLA-APR talk and share sessions coming in the next few months. Thank you both, Professor Hitesh and Professor Nafi. It's bedtime for me in Australia, breakfast time for you, Professor Hitesh, and probably dinner time for you, Professor Nafi. So enjoy the rest of your days and evenings.
Thank you, Toby, for all the moderation. Appreciate it. And next time I'm in Melbourne, make sure you organize a nice latte for me.
Of course, latte galore.
And Nepi, I'll be there. We'll have Hopia together.
Oh, sure. Not just Hopia, I hope.
No, not just Hopia. I'll come and do a presentation at the university.
Okay.
Right. It's been a delight tonight. All right. You two both take care. See everyone. Goodbye.